Imagine a machine that didn't just carry its passengers. It commanded the road with the quiet authority of a private jet gliding at low altitude. Every detail, every curve, every mechanical whisper was built not for speed alone, but for presence. It was the kind of vehicle that made traffic part like a curtain, not through aggression, but through undeniable stature. In an age when luxury was being redefined by power and precision, this car stood at the summit, a creation where technology and ego met in perfect equilibrium. Its legacy isn't measured in sales or awards, but in the names that sat behind its glass and the systems it inspired for decades after. We're about to explore how one of the most extravagant vehicles ever made became the symbol of ultimate authority, and why its story still fascinates today. If you love deep dives into the icons that shaped automotive history, hit like, subscribe, and drop a comment with the next legend you want to uncover. The Mercedes 600 Grosser begins not as a luxury car, but as a declaration. In the early 1960s, Mercedes-Benz set out to create a vehicle that would reassert its place at the top of the global automotive hierarchy, a direct answer to the rise of Rolls-Royce and Cadillac in the post-war prestige market. The result was the 600 Grosser, a car so advanced, so over-engineered, that it became less a product and more a demonstration of national craftsmanship. This was no mere limousine. It was a rolling showcase of what German engineering could do when given unlimited time, budget, and ambition. The 600's story starts with a mission of reinvention. Mercedes-Benz, recovering from wartime ruin and decades of rebuilding, wanted to restore its image as the standard-bearer of technical perfection. Its engineers were told to make a car that would not just equal the world's best, it had to exceed them by a visible mechanical margin. The project was given internal priority above all else. There was no accounting department to rein it in, no compromise to mass market needs. The 600 Grosser was conceived to serve heads of state, moguls, and stars, people for whom comfort and control weren't luxuries, but expectations. That mission shaped every inch of the car's design. From the outside, the Mercedes 600 Grosser had an elegance that bordered on intimidation. Long, perfectly balanced proportions made it appear calm, even when standing still. Its presence wasn't loud, it was absolute. Designers avoided chrome excess or flamboyant shapes, opting instead for architectural clarity, a broad, upright grille, slab sides, and a stance that communicated authority more than opulence. Inside, however, was another world entirely. The cabin was an engineering ecosystem built to isolate occupants from every vibration, temperature fluctuation, or intrusion of noise. Every panel fit with surgical precision. The switchgear felt milled from solid metal because in many cases it was. The wood veneers were selected by hand and matched in grain from door to door. The 600 didn't simply offer luxury, it mechanized it. Beneath that serenity lurked the most complex hydraulic system ever installed in a production vehicle at the time. This system, operating at pressures over 2,000 psi, controlled nearly every movement. Windows, seats, trunk lid, doors, even the partition in long-wheelbase Pullman versions. No electric motors whining, no mechanical clicks, just silent, fluid motion. The effect was eerie and mesmerizing, especially in the 1960s, when power windows themselves were a novelty. But this sophistication came with a price. The hydraulic system demanded absolute precision. A minor leak could disable multiple systems at once. Maintenance wasn't for the faint of heart or wallet. Yet to those who could afford it, that complexity only added to the mystique. Owning a 600 Grosser meant entering a rarefied world where inconvenience was the trade-off for exclusivity. Under the hood, Mercedes installed the mighty 6.3-liter M100 V8, an engine so advanced it would later power the iconic 300cl 6.3 sports sedan. With over 300 horsepower and immense torque, it moved the massive 600 with deceptive ease. Despite weighing well over 2.5 tons, the car could accelerate to 60 mph in around 9 seconds. Astonishing for a vehicle of its size and purpose. But performance wasn't the goal. Composure was. Every component was designed for seamless response, from the self-leveling air suspension to the automatic transmission tuned for imperceptible shifts. The experience of riding in a 600 Grosser was unlike anything else on the road. Passengers didn't feel motion, they experienced progress. Every journey unfolded as a sequence of measured, unhurried gestures. Doors closing with hydraulic precision, suspension rising to meet uneven ground, the engine humming low and distant. For chauffeurs, the car was a challenge. For those in the rear seat, it was a throne. Mercedes built the 600 Grosser in two main body styles. the standard short wheelbase limousine and the elongated Pullman, available with 4 or 6 doors and, in some cases, custom configurations like landaulettes with retractable roofs. Production was painstakingly slow. Each car took weeks to assemble, often tailored to individual specifications. Buyers could request everything from unique upholstery to communication systems, safes, and even television sets. This customization reinforced the 600's identity not as a car for the wealthy, but for the ruling class. The clientele list read like a geopolitical map of power: monarchs, industrialists, pop culture icons, and heads of state. Each one treated the 600 as a symbol, not a vehicle. It was a mobile statement of supremacy. For Mercedes, that was the point. The 600 Grosser wasn't meant to sell in volume. It was designed to cast a halo over the brand, reminding the world that engineering could be both art and diplomacy. Yet as remarkable as the car was, it also represented a contradiction. Beneath the grace and quiet confidence lay an industrial experiment with no commercial precedent. The 600 cost more to build than its price could justify. Even at nearly double the cost of a comparable Rolls-Royce, Mercedes barely broke even. But profit wasn't the metric. Prestige was. Every Grosser that left the factory was a handcrafted ambassador for the idea of uncompromising excellence. And that ideal shaped Mercedes-Benz's philosophy for decades to come. The 600 Grosser wasn't just built to move. It was built to impress, to dominate subtly, to redefine what personal transport could mean when money ceased to be a limit. As the 1960s progressed, the car's reputation grew in parallel with the people who owned it. It became the chosen vehicle for those who didn't need to prove power, only display it. But as the political and cultural landscape shifted, the meaning of such excess began to change too. In the next segment, we'll see how the 600 Grosser evolved from engineering marvel to cultural icon, and how that same perfectionism that made it famous would also seal its fate. The Mercedes 600 Grosser entered the public consciousness not just as a car, but as a phenomenon. By the late 1960s, it had become a fixture of newsreels and magazine covers, often appearing in convoy form, gliding past cheering crowds or through guarded gates. Its silhouette was unmistakable, long, squared off, and stately. For the world's elite, it was the one automobile that could match their influence. And that's where its cultural power truly began. In Europe, the 600 Grosser quickly became the de facto state limousine. Governments purchased them as symbols of post-war renewal and national pride. A Grosser in the motorcade wasn't just a convenience, it was a message: stability, authority, control. Across continents, it carried leaders who defined eras. The car's air suspension ironed out cobblestones and dirt roads with equal grace, while its interior shielded occupants from the chaos outside. It projected an almost supernatural calm, even amid political turbulence. This aura made it irresistible not only to democracies, but also to regimes seeking legitimacy through spectacle. The same design language that embodied German precision now found itself associated with power in all its forms, benevolent or otherwise. The Mercedes 600 Grosser became a paradox, a masterpiece of engineering celebrated by both the world's most beloved figures and its most controversial. That duality was part of its fascination. Owning one wasn't merely about wealth, it was about commanding attention. In the United States, the 600 took on a slightly different identity. It arrived as an exotic import, the kind of car that appeared in Beverly Hills driveways or outside recording studios. American buyers like Elvis Presley and John Lennon saw it not just as transportation, but as a stage on wheels. To them, it was the ultimate expression of success, European sophistication meeting unrestrained ambition. Yet for every celebrity who adored its indulgence, there were critics who found it excessive, even intimidating. The Grosser didn't blend, it announced itself. Compared to Cadillac's soft, chrome-heavy opulence, the Mercedes was coldly modern, almost austere. It was luxury stripped of sentiment, replaced by precision. That difference fascinated American audiences, especially at a time when the definition of luxury was shifting from ornamentation to technology. Behind the glamour, however, the car's complexity began to reveal its darker side. The same hydraulic systems that impressed so many owners also terrified mechanics. Even routine maintenance required specialized knowledge and tools that few shops possessed. When the system was functioning, it was silent perfection. When it failed, it could turn the car into an immobile sculpture. Parts availability was limited and repair costs soared. Many owners discovered that maintaining a Grosser was less about keeping a car running and more about preserving an artifact. Despite its challenges, Mercedes continued production through the 1970s, with minimal updates. The 600 existed in a bubble, untouched by market trends or fuel crises. But time was catching up. As emissions regulations tightened and oil prices surged, even the most extravagant buyers began to question whether such a machine still fit the times. Competitors offered newer limousines with electronic features, lower fuel consumption, and easier serviceability. The Grosser's engineering, once its greatest strength, now looked like a relic of an earlier age of excess. Still, it refused to disappear. Collectors and loyalists kept the legend alive, drawn to its combination of power and mystery. In pop culture, the Mercedes 600 Grosser became shorthand for ultimate authority, the car of diplomats, rock stars, and villains alike. Filmmakers used its imposing form to suggest intelligence, menace, or absolute control. Its presence on screen was enough to set a tone before a word was spoken. Meanwhile, Mercedes itself drew lessons from its flagship. The pursuit of perfection that defined the 600 evolved into a guiding principle for future S-Class models. The emphasis on comfort, safety, and silent operation all traced their lineage back to the Grosser's blueprint. In many ways, the 600 served as both a peak and a foundation, an unreachable standard that every subsequent luxury sedan would chase but never replicate entirely. Beyond its engineering, the car influenced attitudes about what luxury could mean. Before the Grosser, prestige often meant extravagance, gold trim, ornate design, endless embellishment. After it, luxury became synonymous with mastery of detail and invisible technology. The 600 taught the industry that true power didn't need to shout. It could whisper, so long as everyone was listening. Yet for all its symbolic strength, the Grosser also exposed the limits of perfection. It demonstrated that technology could serve status, but not sustain it forever. As Mercedes prepared for the next era, the 600's contradictions became clear. An icon of progress built on principles too costly to continue. The 1970s ended with fewer orders, longer production times, and rising doubts about the car's future. The world was moving toward efficiency and restraint, while the Grosser remained defiantly rooted in an age of indulgence. By 1981, Mercedes quietly ended production. In total, fewer than 2,700 units had been built over 17 years, a microscopic number by modern standards, but each one a world unto itself. The end of the 600 Grosser marked more than just the conclusion of a model line. It symbolized the close of an era when engineering ambition could exist unchecked by practicality. Yet its influence would not fade. In the next segment, we'll explore how the spirit of the 600 Grosser continues to shape luxury today, how its DNA can still be felt in every flagship Mercedes, and why collectors continue to treat it not as an artifact of the past, but as a statement of what perfection once looked like. The Mercedes 600 Grosser remains one of the few cars whose influence extends far beyond its production years. When its assembly ended in 1981, Mercedes-Benz didn't simply move on, it absorbed the Grosser's philosophy into its DNA. Every flagship sedan that followed, from the first S-Class to the most modern Maybach, owes its ethos to the groundwork laid by the 600. The car's blend of silence, authority, and seamless engineering became the brand's unspoken language of luxury. To understand its legacy, one must look at how the Mercedes 600 Grosser reshaped the idea of prestige. It taught automakers that true luxury is not about excess, it's about effortlessness. The 600's ability to isolate, to shield, to move without perceptible strain defined what top-tier automobiles would aim for in the decades to come. Even as technology evolved from hydraulic systems to electronic ones, the goal remained the same: absolute composure. You can trace that lineage directly through the W126, the W140 Sonderklasse, and the rebirth of the Maybach line. Each carried a piece of the Grosser's spirit, its calm power, its unapologetic precision, its devotion to those who valued control above all else. The collectors who preserve these cars today aren't just maintaining vintage machinery. They're curating a moment in history when craftsmanship and authority were intertwined. To drive a well-preserved 600 Grosser now is to experience a time capsule of mechanical mastery. The sensation is unlike anything modern. Weighty yet fluid, isolated yet commanding. The air suspension still glides, the doors still close with hydraulic finality, and the engine's deep hum still feels more like a declaration than an exhaust note. It's as if time itself slows to match the car's tempo. But owning one today isn't easy. The same complexity that made the 600 extraordinary in the 1960s makes it formidable for modern caretakers. few technicians possess the knowledge to service its intricate systems. Parts are rare, often requiring bespoke fabrication. Restoration can cost more than the value of the car itself, yet enthusiasts persist. For them, the 600 Grosser is not about investment. It's about reverence. It represents a standard of engineering that's unlikely to return. In a world of digital interfaces and software-controlled driving dynamics, the 600's analog perfection feels almost otherworldly. It demands patience, precision, and respect, and that's part of its appeal. What's most striking is how the car's symbolism has evolved. When new, the Mercedes 600 Grosser was the emblem of the powerful few, monarchs, magnates, and icons of wealth. Today, it's revered by a different audience, those who study design, history, and the philosophy of luxury itself. They see in the 600 not just a car, but a manifesto, a statement about what happens when technology serves human comfort without compromise. That's why museums display it, why filmmakers still cast it, and why collectors chase even the rarest variants like the 6-door Pullman or the open-top Landaulet. Each represents a slightly different expression of the same central idea, the pursuit of perfection as a moral duty. For Mercedes-Benz, the 600's influence remains institutional. The brand's current design language, from its seamless interior interfaces to its emphasis on quiet confidence, reflects lessons learned from the Grosser. The commitment to smooth power delivery, isolation from road noise, and user-focused comfort all began with this car's blueprint. Even the modern Maybach, often described as a spiritual successor, borrows the same philosophy, where the passenger, not the driver, is the center of gravity. But perhaps the greatest legacy of the Mercedes 600 Grosser is psychological. It altered how people perceive authority on the road. To this day, a black limousine with restrained chrome detailing evokes the same aura the 600 pioneered: elegant, intimidating, untouchable. Governments still favor this visual language of power because it communicates something primal: order, precision, control. Few vehicles have ever embedded their design DNA so deeply into the collective imagination. Beyond its physical form, the 600 also symbolizes the end of an era. It stands as the last automobile built with virtually no regard for cost, emissions, or market practicality. A final monument to the belief that perfection could be engineered through willpower alone. That spirit is both inspiring and haunting. It reminds us of what can be achieved when innovation is unrestrained, and of the responsibility that comes with that freedom. Today, when automakers balance luxury with sustainability, the 600's story feels almost mythic, a relic of a time when craftsmanship answered only to ambition. And yet its presence lingers. Whether seen at a concours event, gliding through a private collection, or preserved in archival footage, the Mercedes 600 Grosser continues to command respect. Its very existence challenges modern notions of progress, asking whether newer always means better, or whether greatness sometimes lies in the perfection of the past. The Grosser didn't just set a standard for its era. It redefined what excellence could mean, and that definition still echoes through every flagship sedan wearing the three-pointed star. In the end, the Mercedes 600 Grosser is more than a car. It's a time capsule of human intent, a tangible reminder that luxury, at its purest, is the art of making complexity disappear. And that lesson, the mastery of invisible excellence, remains its most enduring gift. In the final section, we'll bring this legacy into the present day, exploring what owning or experiencing a Mercedes 600 Grosser means now, what to look for in today's market, and how this titan of the 1960s still commands reverence half a century later. For anyone considering the Mercedes 600 Grosser today, the first thing to understand is that ownership isn't about convenience, it's about commitment. The car may have been conceived for the world's elite, but in 2025, it's sustained by passion rather than privilege. The 600 demands more than admiration. It requires stewardship. Finding one in top condition is increasingly rare, and even more challenging is finding one that's been properly maintained. Many examples that surface at auctions or private sales appear immaculate on the outside, yet hide decades of deferred hydraulic or electrical work beneath that mirror-like paint. Buyers quickly learn that authenticity and mechanical integrity matter more than show floor shine. The Mercedes 600 Grosser remains a marvel of analog complexity. Hydraulics that still hum at over 2,000 psi, self-leveling air suspension that defies age, and a 6.3-liter V8 that, when tuned correctly, still delivers that signature surge of silent authority. But each of these systems carries costs. In the United States, service expertise is limited to a handful of specialists, most clustered on the coasts or in major metropolitan areas. For collectors, that scarcity adds to the car's mystique. For owners, it defines the experience. Restoring a 600 Grosser is less about mechanical repair and more about resurrection. Every gasket, hose, and piston feels like an artifact of a forgotten philosophy. Yet when everything works as intended, the result is transcendent. A car that erases decades the moment it glides onto the road. Prices have reflected that renewed reverence. Well-preserved examples typically command high six-figure sums, while rare variants, especially the Pullman and Landaulet configurations, regularly exceed $1 million at auction. But the value of the 600 Grosser isn't purely financial. It's emotional and historical. For enthusiasts, it represents the final link to a time when engineering served artistry without compromise. For Mercedes-Benz, it remains a sacred benchmark, often cited internally as the brand's purest expression of mastery. And for historians, it's a rolling symbol of how power, design, and technology can merge into one commanding form. In the US, owning a 600 Grosser carries its own cultural resonance. Unlike European royal fleets, American examples often come from celebrity provenance. Elvis Presley's, for instance, or John Lennon's. These cars tell stories not just of wealth, but of a fascination with status and symbolism. Each one connects to an era when influence was measured not in algorithms, but in the sound of a hydraulic door sealing the world out. Reliability, of course, is relative. Even well-maintained examples demand constant attention, and parts must often be custom fabricated or sourced from Germany. But the car rewards that care. Unlike many vintage luxury vehicles, the Grosser's construction quality remains astonishing. Its panels align perfectly after half a century, its doors close with that unmistakable precision, and its suspension still cushions the road as though gravity itself were optional. For those willing to invest the time and resources, it's not just an heirloom, it's an education in what mechanical excellence once meant. More than anything, the Mercedes 600 Grosser offers perspective. It shows how far automotive luxury has come, and how much of its original soul was lost along the way. Modern sedans deliver more speed, efficiency, and safety, but few deliver the same sense of ceremony. Every function in the 600 feels deliberate, from the hydraulic window that glides in perfect silence to the faint scent of aged leather that carries half a century of history. It's an experience that no screen, no software update can replicate. For US collectors, import logistics are surprisingly straightforward, since the car easily meets the 25-year exemption rule. What's harder is finding one worthy of preservation. Many have been neglected or modified, losing the fine balance that defined their magic. The wisest approach is patience. Seek documented ownership, original parts, and evidence of hydraulic system upkeep. Once in proper form, the 600 rewards with the kind of presence modern luxury can only imitate. The takeaway is simple. The Mercedes 600 Grosser wasn't built for practicality, and it never pretended to be. It was built to show what was possible when perfection came before profit, and that's why it still matters. For viewers in the United States, the 600 stands as both a dream and a challenge, a reminder that true luxury isn't about abundance, but about mastery. Every surviving Grosser is a moving monument to human precision, each journey in one a small glimpse into an era when ambition had no ceiling. Half a century later, its power remains undiminished, its aura intact. The world may have changed, but the Mercedes 600 Grosser still rules its lane with quiet authority. Proof that when excellence is built without compromise, time itself becomes its passenger.